Hello, welcome to another episode of Bear in Mind presents Around the World in 50 Films. Our balloon has touched down in the Republic of Ireland this week, where we are looking at a film from 2014, from Ireland's relatively recent burgeoning animation industry called
Mhm.
Song of the Sea.
Yep. The second film by director Tom Moore. After what was the first one that he did?
The
Was
Secret of Kells.
The Secret of Kells by the same in the same animation studio. The animation studio has actually been around for quite a while.
And they've recently also done The Breadwinner.
The Breadwinner.
And
There's a few other things as well.
they've got a movie coming out on Apple TV soon about
mm,
wolves.
yes, yeah. They got an interesting animation style. As an animation house, Tom Moore's particular style is similar to the rest of the house, but it's a little bit more inspired by the Asian animation with a little hint of like the Moomins and things like
I
that.
remember when these films were coming out, because this is a film I've wanted to watch for years and I've just never got round to it.
Mm.
And I remember when they were coming out, particularly the first two, Kells and then this Song of the Sea, it was very much like the Irish Ghibli is what they were kind of referred to.
Yeah, I think there is an element to that, definitely. But I've read a few interviews with Tom Moore in preparation for this, and I think there was certainly a feel of that. This film in particular has
I think
been
it's the
compared
mystical
to.
elements, isn't it? The fairy
Yeah, I
tale
mean,
elements that lead to that.
it's been compared to Spirited Away.
Yeah.
So it's which I suppose is fairly accurate in some of its mystical elements, not necessarily its audience, but in some of its mystical elements, definitely.
It reminded me of Bashki's Lord of the Rings a bit in its animation style.
Yep. Yeah. I think again that's like when I mentioned the Moomins before. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
the older Moomins, definitely that would have been a
I
similar
love the
era of.
Moomins.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, it's a similar era of animation to Bashki's Lord of the Rings, and obviously, again, I mean, the Moomins are suitable for this because that's more mythology. Really,
Yeah.
the Moomins based on the Norwegian trolls that are a big part of Norwegian mythology.
Did you ever watch Netflix's Hilda?
I didn't know.
Very good.
Yeah.
Also, very mythology based and
Mm.
well worth a watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it this had hallmarks of quite a lot of animations from my youth as well. The type of thing that it wasn't the stuff that was on the BBC. It was quite often the stuff that like ITV would have brought up or a
Yeah.
fledgling Channel 4 that they were quite obviously non-English language animations. Some of them were from the continent. Some of them were from Asia, and they'd been dubbed, and you could sort of tell that they'd been dubbed with the English voices over the top. But very fantastical, very like otherworldly. There was a feel to it, and I think Tom Moore is only I think he's 6 years older than me, so we're pretty much the same generation. So we would have watched a lot of the same animation as children, and I think you can see that in the artistic style that he has chosen for
I mean,
this.
we should probably tell our viewers what the film's about, if they're wondering.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe.
so, yeah, it is, as you probably guessed, an animated film. And it is about a family that lives kind of secluded at a lighthouse.
Mm,
And they lose their wife and mother in childbirth to a younger sister.
Hmm.
And I guess it's how the family processes that over the years, explored through the vein of local myths and legends.
Yeah. And it's I think tonally, and again, I think this was backed up with some of the interviews that I read. This is definitely aimed at children, maybe a family film. It isn't necessarily aimed at adults to be watching it by themselves. I think there is like, although it's no, I mean, I know obviously like it is actually a really good film. Before we like go too far, I think we both got quite a lot out of it, and it's very very well made. But I think there is an innocence and a childishness, and not in a bad way. That I think that like children who are relatively young could watch this and it be accessible.
I think it can serve as an educational piece.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of useful stuff there in
Mm.
teaching how to process loss and
Grief.
and
Yeah.
grief. Yeah,
Mm. And I
like
think, go on, sorry.
'cause it's fundamentally the tale of a young boy who has to learn he can't blame his sister for the
For
loss
the
of his
lofism,
mother.
which is on the surface an incredibly hefty piece of
Yeah,
information and concept to deal with. And again, like I think the fact that this film pulls it off with a tone that is suitable for, I think certain children of as young as 5 could watch this and probably understand it. And I think that's a testament to how brilliantly made this film is. It probably does at times feel again a little bit childish watching it as an adult, like just not not a bad childish, but like it didn't feel like it was aimed at me specifically, and
yeah.
I didn't think that was a detrimental at all.
I think I'm potentially the bigger animation fan out of the pair
Mm.
of us.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
love animation, but it's not necessarily something I hunt out and analyze and
I watch a fair amount of cartoons and cartoons that I'm not inherently necessarily the target
mm,
audience for, but I like cartoons.
yeah. I mean, we both watched the. I mean, I've only seen season 1, but we both watched the recent She-Ra on Netflix.
I've only seen
Um,
season 1 as well. I need to catch
yeah,
up on that.
and again, totally not aimed at us, but a magnificent piece of work. And I think this very much in the same vein it isn't aimed at us, but it's so good that you can appreciate the quality of it. I think that's one of the great things about this film. Beyond obviously teaching the lessons of grief, the main motivation of this film was actually trying to teach the youth about some Irish myths and legends, because apparently Secret of Kells in Ireland did really badly. It
Oh,
made like no money. Um,
I
so
did not know that.
and yeah, it bombed. It did significantly better after it got its Oscar nomination, but at that point it was almost too late. Um, and so I think there was a feeling that it was slightly too Irish in a way. Apparently, like Irish cinema in Ireland doesn't do very well, and it only does well once it's done well in the US and
Yeah,
potentially in the UK. And if they're happy that it's done well there in those 2 locations, then cinema chains will take it on comfortably and with some confidence, and then people will go and see it. I mean, even Tom Moore himself said in one of the interviews I read that he met up with another Irish director and realized that he was guilty of the same thing. He was like, they had this very conversation, and then after the conversation realized, I've not even seen his film. It's out in the cinema at the moment, and I've not gone and seen it. So even like Irish filmmakers themselves are guilty of the things that are letting Irish filmmakers down. And so this was, they had a much more deliberate plan with this film to bring it into a modern-ish setting. I got the feeling it was set in the 70s, maybe the early 80s, which would be, again, roughly Tom Moore's childhood age.
It was contemporary.
But
an ageless contemporary. Like,
yeah, it was like,
it was just set in an ever-present now. I
mm,
thought.
for me, there was just that tiny little hint of things that like it might have been more along when Tom Moore would have been a kid, when he would have maybe been the age of the little boy in the piece of Ben in the piece. So I think Ben was maybe six in the film.
Yeah.
So I mean, Tom Moore would have been 6 in '83, I think it is. So I mean, maybe because obviously he would have drawn from his own memories of what it was like to be a child. So obviously making it more contemporary, making it more relevant. But then even then the distribution was very deliberate in that they released it in the States first, because America, in particular certain parts of America, just eat up Irish things as soon as put a label on it and they'll have it. So it made its money, it got the Oscar nomination, and then it had its Irish release, and they held it off until then. And so this one did significantly better than Secret of Kells.
And I think
think
since then the studio has branched out into other topics and other.
Well, I mean, I think looking into the studio's done quite a lot of other topics anyway. Because like Tom Moore isn't the only director. This was his second film as director working for the studio, but not his second film working for the studio. So Breadwinner that you mentioned earlier, which is a Middle Eastern tale about modern Middle Eastern struggles, and again being a child in those situations. That is directed by one of the more long-term members of the animation
And
house.
it's on Netflix if anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah. And that one, I think, was I haven't read up properly on it, but I think the author of the book approached them and they kind of made it for them. But I mean, it was interesting because there were many things that I recognised mythology wise, and not just from like Irish mythology, but from like there are similarities to various international mythologies as well.
Well, I also, to a certain extent, I think there's common ground in various mythologies of the British Isles.
Yeah, I mean I was actually talking around the world as well. The stone giant that becomes an island. That is a common theme around the world. Obviously, if you've seen Moana, that's a similar idea. The short film that came alongside Zootopia or Zootropolis, depending on what the musical one about the two volcano islands.
I thought you were calling Zootopia musical then.
No. Obviously, that's a similar one. I lived in Korea for a while. The people of Jeju, which is a volcanic island to the south of Korea, they have a similar like origins myth of the island of Jeju.
I think it's a way to explain islands, isn't it?
That like this great hulking mass is something powerful and strong, and it comes from and usually from emotion as well. Obviously, in Moana, it was great anger. In Ireland, it was great sadness.
I did
Um,
like the Wizard of Ozing other myths.
mm,
How the major figures they met on their adventure
yeah.
are all the people from their lives.
Mm,
The long
yes.
bearded guy is
The boat driver and
yeah,
yeah, and
evil
the owl
the owl witch. Well, the evil's not the right word.
mm,
She's also dealing with
yeah,
her
and that
pain is not being able to see the pain her
in
child
others. Yeah,
is.
yeah. I
That
mean,
is the Gran.
she's yeah. I mean, it's yeah. Even the villain of the piece actually is very much a peaceful creature in a way. She's just a bit misguided. Um, so
I mean,
it's a nice tale on dealing with emotion of all types, not just grief.
yeah.
Obviously,
But
grief is the main thread, but
if we're gonna label a villain,
mm,
the villain is mismanaged
yeah,
emotion, mismanaged pain,
yeah,
and how it's a cliche, but how hurt people
mm,
tend to hurt people in the
yeah, yeah. If you're damaged, you're likely to damage someone else.
yeah.
Uh, um, the it was interesting watching it with my wife because as part of her university degree, she had a pretty much a whole year dedicated to Irish literature, um, which of course included Irish myths, legends, old Irish folklore and tales, stuff like that. And it was so she spotted things and went, "Yep, know what that is? Know what that is? This will play into this and this will play into that." And it's one of the reasons she doesn't like not Lord of Game of Thrones. She read the first book and watched the first season of it, and was thoroughly disappointed because it's essentially copy and paste Irish mythology, but without necessarily any real creative effort on top of it. They've literally just transplanted any Irish story and put new names on it. So,
I,
but
yeah. I think it's a very. I think it was a good pick for where we've landed as well.
definitely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously the name of it, "Song of the Sea," like one of the main things about Irish culture going back is the importance of the sea. Obviously, it is an island. It is completely surrounded by water. It's not a huge island as well. It's so like it's fairly easy to get to the sea from almost anywhere in the country, and even before cars and planes and trains and things like that, it wouldn't have necessarily been like
Yeah,
it would have been no more than maybe 2 days walk or something like that to actually get to the sea. So I mean, like the water is incredibly important. One of our other choices, which unfortunately we couldn't access because it just isn't available anywhere unless you purchase it, was the early 2000s documentary Wave Riders, because it again had a completely different perspective, but it was about the importance of the sea to Irish culture, but to a modern Irish culture and how Ireland is defining itself now. So for those that don't know, Wave Riders is a film about surfing in Ireland, because in the early 2000s, all a big chunk of the major surfers around the world, so the Americans, the Australians, just suddenly realised that the Irish coast offered some of the best surf in the world, and just invaded essentially. And so there's this huge upsurge of surf culture in Ireland. But yeah, unfortunately, that was through normal means without purchasing a Blu-ray or something like that. Was not available. We landed on this film, partly because we wanted something a little bit more cheery, as we said in the Welsh one. I know, obviously, this is
say
dealing with.
Jerry, and I will admit it does not take much for a
Yeah.
film or a TV production to get me to tear up.
Mm,
But the end of this film,
mm,
cathartic,
yeah.
but it really got me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've never experienced bad enough grief, to be honest, that it didn't get me as much, obviously, as it did get you. I felt it. But it was I know this is going to sound really awful, but it was almost a nice grief. Like, at the end, there was it felt
You're not wrong.
like it gave the children and it gave the father some closure, and you knew that, like, the mother had gone to a better place, and
it's a release for them all.
Yeah. So as sad as it was also quite beautiful, and I think dealt with really nicely. And again, oddly enough, go on.
Ending on that kind of almost happy photo album as well of the kids, and then the grandmother shifts from being such a stern figure into being a much more kind of happy figure, spending time with him on the island, and you know, it is nice, and a nice grief, as in it's like I just mentioned, it's cathartic.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think one thing we both said was the film is nice, and that doesn't sound like strong praise. Sometimes things should just be nice. Like, it's a nice film. It'll be a lovely way to spend a Sunday afternoon.
Yes. Yeah, it is very much one of those. You've had a hefty Saturday. I'm thinking, like, as a family, but like, like, not necessarily on the drink or anything like that, but like, you've as a family, you've gone out and you've had an adventurous Saturday, and mum and dad are absolutely knackered, and so on Sunday, you've maybe all had a little sleep in, and then on Sunday afternoon you're lazing there, and this film comes on. It's one of those kind of things.
Well, bank holiday.
Yeah.
So growing up, my dad was a factory worker, so bank holidays were a actual thing. That meant something.
Yeah.
Like, these days, I work in retail. Bank holidays are nothing. They're just
bank holidays. Yeah, bank holidays don't mean anything. Like, and I mean, I've worked in hospitality as well, where bank holidays do mean something. It means the worst day of the year, because you're going to be so aggressively busy and full of and filled with people who only come out on bank holidays, and quite frankly, some of the worst people in existence.
Going back to the notion of, I think you mentioned part of the film reminds you of childhood. There is a whole feeling running through the film of the kind of film you'd watch on it'd be on like BBC or something at 2:00 on a bank holiday afternoon, and you'd all just settle in to watch it.
Yeah, it's something that they possibly got through a deal because they bought various films from a distribution company, and like, this one was like just part of the deal, and they throw it on as filler, but it's one of those little gems that you probably wouldn't have deliberately gone out of your way to watch, but because it happened to be on at the time that you wanted to watch something, you've watched it, and it'll slowly become a family favorite. Like,
and I think it would pair, like, kind of touching on one of our other shows, the Double Bill Film Club. I think there's a lot of films like Wizard of Oz that this film would pair nicely with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Wizard of Oz. I mean, again, obviously, there's various versions of Wizard of Oz because it's been in the public domain for a while. And there are those animated ones that are a bit weirder and a bit darker and what have you. And there was one that like did the rounds when I was a kid that I think it was in one of those like bundle packs as for like. It would have been VHSs at the time.
Yeah, like those VHS of cheaply made public domain.
Yeah, those ones. Yeah, like really terrifying Pinocchios and things like that. like this isn't the Pinocchio I know. Like this isn't the Disney one.
It's that, you know, that meme format that does around. Like, Mom, I want Pinocchio. It's like, we've got Pinocchio at home.
Yeah, and then Pinocchio at home. And he's got a knife for a nose or something. Yeah. Of course, that we're now completely just like just putting people off this film. It's like, but
we've gone on a tangent that is not related to the film.
No, not at all. Although it's odd because like the animation style is actually a bit like those, and I think again it's probably
like because, a good version.
Yeah, because I think because again, Tom Moore is a similar age to me, so like I think he would have been exposed to a lot of this. Like there'd be a certain nostalgia for crappy films like that I would have, that he has, and so you can see that like potentially some of that has helped shape his animation choice. And it works. That's the thing. I mean, obviously, when you've got a competent,
the animation is stunning. It's
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a pretty film.
What it also reminded me of was a lot of modern indie games, like because it's this sort of almost flat view of the world. Like it's not 3D, it's not 2D. It's this weird kind of deliberate series of flat layers to create an element of depth. It does look like a lot of the like the more dreamy current indie games. Like if anyone's played like the Ori and the Blind Forest or Ori and the Will of the Wisps and things like that. There are other games, of course, but like that has that feel and look of this. It reminded me. It also what was that PlayStation game that came out this year? It was about graffitiing, like magic graffiti.
I don't remember the name, but I know what you're on about. Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up now. So,
well, while he's looking that up, if anyone's interested in watching this film in the UK, at least, it is on Amazon Prime.
Yes, which again is one of the reasons that we chose that one.
As we've said before, we're always going to try and pick film. Concrete Genie.
Yes, sorry. But we're always going to try and pick films that are like available legally,
and easily accessible for you guys if you want to watch it. Us pulling out an obscure Blu-ray off of shelves isn't necessarily going to be easy for everyone to watch.
I mean, I think if it's something that we think is significant enough and we happen to own it, then
we'll always make. What I'm saying is, we'll make the effort to try and find something easily accessible.
Also, I think if if it is a case of we own it and it isn't streamable, but say the Blu-ray is under £10, then we might go for that. Because again, if we think the film is worth it, then we might make a suggestion like that. So I think
we both
on the whole,
enjoyed it.
loved it. it's certainly something that if and when I have kids, I think they're old enough for it, then they'll watch it, and I'll watch it with them definitely. But yeah, after that, I think it was a nice stopgap for us, because chances are next week in the Northern Ireland we've narrowed it down to 2 films, I think, and they're not as dark as we thought they might have been. But Northern Irish cinema does heavily focus on the Troubles, so finding something a bit lighter there is not as easy as you might think. So I think this week gave us quite a nice little breather before
Yeah.
whatever we choose for next week.
So we're going to head back to our balloon,
Mhm.
and we'll see you all when we touch down in Northern Ireland next week.
Indeed, which will take us to our penultimate stop on this first season and first little round trip. So thank you very
Stay
much.
safe, everybody.
See you soon.